Our next guest is Joel Gilbert, an American filmmaker and musician. Joel specialises in political films and is about to touch down on Australian soil to launch his latest work, The Climate According to Al Gore. Now, other works of Joel's include Trump, The Art of the Insult, and There's No Place Like Utopia. He joins us from LA right now. Joel, welcome to the program.
Great to be here. Thanks so much.
Before we start, we've got a snippet of the trailer of your film, and this gives people an idea of exactly what we're about to talk about. This is intriguing. Have a look at this.
Dear Senator Gore, I would love to interview you about Revell and learn more about your journey in climate science as well as your personal history. Gore didn't respond, so I decided to use AI technology to speak to Al Gore.
Well, hello again, Joel.
Senator Gore.
I'm thrilled to have a visit with one of my old student interns.
Are you ready for some questions?
Fire away.
Joel, one of your student interns, is that right?
That's right. I'm originally from Tennessee, and when Al Gore was a U.S. Senator from Tennessee, I was a student in Washington, D.C., and worked for him for 3 months on his staff. So I kind of got to know Al Gore. And the premise of the film is I actually did write Al Gore an email and asked him to talk about climate science and where it came from, where he got his ideas from. He didn't respond, so I said, well, what if I could use AI technology to recreate a video and audio of the real Al Gore and have an honest conversation? And that's what I did. It's a lot of research, and it's very entertaining and informative about where the climate science really does come from.
Now, things have changed a lot. We've learnt a lot about the climate since Al introduced us to his version of it. No doubt you were fascinated by what he had to say and his climate mission.
Well, look, Al Gore started it all with his book. It's called Earth in the Balance, 1992. It was kind of this apocalyptic environmental manifesto. And this is where it all started. And later in 2006, he came out with the Inconvenient Truth movie. And after that, the climate science just penetrated all of our media, politics, and education. But Gore, all those years, said he got this climate science from his Harvard professor. And that's what I researched in this film. I went down to San Diego where his professor's papers are stored, and I find out that his professor did not agree with Al Gore on climate science, global warming, nothing. Oh. And I also found out that Gore, he plagiarized his book when he was in divinity school. I found this book that he read called Our Plundered Planet. It was an apocalyptic kind of humorous book from the 40s. And I found that Gore plagiarized it and came up with his manifesto. So what I think I discovered in my research is that climate science is not based on any real science. It's based on a politician, Al Gore, wanting to garner support in a run for president. He thought the environmental issue would resonate with American voters. And if he told the truth, if he said, I got my clients' climate science from my radical environmental professors at divinity school in 1971, and I copied this book, he would have been laughed off. So he attributed his climate science to a mainstream Harvard professor. And I think I really show the rest is history.
So give us an idea of what the professor said to you about what Al Gore has said to the rest of the world.
Well, Al Gore bragged for years, including in this book, including in an Inconvenient Truth movie. He talked about Roger Revell, his Harvard professor, who was someone in the 1950s started taking measurements of carbon dioxide and simply asked good questions. Now, Revell's papers at the University of San Diego here in California, and I found numerous articles that Revell wrote, including an article called Look Before You Leap, basically saying, don't listen to Al Gore, because Revell simply asked questions. He didn't make any conclusions. And we find out that Gore politicized Revell's science with an alarmist political apocalyptic agenda in order to justify it. And he got caught when he ran for vice president in 1992. They asked him during the vice presidential debate, hey, we heard that your professor and your mentor doesn't even agree with you. And Al Gore blatantly lied. So this is a major finding that the entire climate science movement, whose godfather is Al Gore, who's their messiah that started it off in 1992, he lied about the source of his science. He was no scientist. He was somebody that plagiarized a book from the 1940s.
Now, when you think of it, he is the politician. He is the one that probably should have been asking the questions, and the professor should have been the one coming up with the conclusions and the summary, not the other way around.
Well, Al Gore, I worked for him in 1989 when I was a student, and he had made himself an arms control expert because he wanted to run for president. We talk about this in my film, how his father was a U.S. senator and kind of groomed him from a very young age to run for president one day. The problem is Al Gore did not have the personality or the charisma that his father had, so he tried to create issues. He made himself an arms control expert and offered up arms control proposals to the Soviet Union. Ronald Reagan at the time completely ignored Gore, even though Gore was invited to the Soviet Union, and Ronald Reagan won the Cold War without Al Gore. When that issue dissipated, Gore went to environmental science to try to create a movement and give himself an issue, because there was a lot of concern in the late 80s, early 90s about the environment.
Yeah.
There was the Exxon Valdez, the Chernobyl accident.
The ozone layer.
Medical waste was washing up on the shore. So he thought that was a great issue, and he created it out of nothing by, as I mentioned, plagiarizing an old book that he saw from divinity school.
That was my next question. Give us an example of what he plagiarized from that book.
It's just everything. The concept of Earth in the Balance is that the entire policy of the Western world has to revolve around protecting the environment, and we need a global Marshall Plan. It's this apocalyptic vision that the sky is falling like Chicken Little, and if we all don't work together under some kind of global governance, we're all going to die in 10 years. That was in 1992. So Our Plundered Planet was a very popular book in the 40s. It was read by the President Eisenhower and Eleanor Roosevelt. Albert Einstein wrote a quote for it. It was kind of a fun book about how all of the earth, it was pristine, and man came along, humanity came along and is ruining the earth. They're destroying the environment. So we have to have this global government. So what we expose is that climate science is really an attack on free markets. It's an attack on modernity. It's by these radicals who believe that the earth is being destroyed by humanity and has to go back to its original state, and humans have to live without technology. So this movement has just taken over all of our media and politics. Governments today spend billions worldwide on carbon policies. And in the film, I even talk about and show how carbon is only 1/3 of 1% of gas in the atmosphere.
Yes.
And it does not affect the weather or climate. The weather is affected by, and the temperature is affected by the tilt of the earth, volcanoes, water vapor, sunspots, you name it. And the more carbon we have, the better, because it's plant food.
Yeah.
If they increase the amount of carbon, we have larger crops and trees all over the world. So the entire climate science is really tracing it back to Al Gore's faux science that he got and presented to the world as some kind of mainstream theory that he got out of Harvard.
I get the impression, and you tell me because this is your baby, it's not mine, but I get the impression that the world is waking up to the old climate narrative that we're all doomed, and they're starting to have a close look at some of the aspects of climate that you have just mentioned and that I continually talk about. The fact that we've closed down so many coal-fired power stations in this country and in the United States, and yet we still have increasing amounts of CO2, doesn't follow what the IPCC have been telling us about what the models indicate will be our future. I don't think any of this science makes any sense. But do you think the public is starting to wake up to that?
It's very tough because there's trillions of dollars at stake. All these scientists are being paid to agree.
Yeah.
And they indoctrinate the youth at Columbia University. They have a climate school. Even last night's debate, Kamala Harris says Donald Trump thinks climate change is a hoax. And the Inflation Reduction Act in the United States, Biden admitted was a $300 billion climate bill. So it's very difficult. This whole climate science has taken on the aspects of a religion, and they harshly judge anybody that doesn't agree, like you're a heretic. All of us are original sinners because we use fossil fuels. And the only way to gain salvation is through sustainability. So if you buy an electric car, you're good. If you don't buy an electric car, you're bad. So this climate science and the amount of money involved makes it very difficult, I think, people to want to oppose or disagree with his agenda. Even RFK Jr., who is somewhat popular recently because of his endorsement of Trump among conservatives, I've got him in tape. He's in my film on tape saying that people that are skeptical about climate science should go to jail. So that's some of the mentality going on today.
It's outrageous. You've done a lot of research, I can tell that. I guess the AI part of your film was not necessarily the hardest part.
Well, there are services today that you provide a videotape, which I did of Al Gore, and a voice sample, and you just type in what you want him to say. So, I mean, I read 7 or 8 biographies of Al Gore. I read hundreds of articles based on my own experience working with him. I think I got to the truth through all my research, and we have AI Al Gore is very honest. He tells the truth. So I think it's a very fun concept. It's a very entertaining movie. We're going to be in Brisbane on October 3rd at the Elizabeth Theatre. I'm going to be screening the film at Parliament House in Canberra. We're going to have the schedule. It's on my website, climatealgore.com.
climatealgore.com. Fantastic. Joel Gilbert, congratulations on what you've achieved. It will be a huge hit here because we are fairly significant skeptics in Australia. And after COVID-19, we've become even more sceptical. Thank you very much for your time. We look forward to seeing you when you're in Australia.